Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Kev Baker, and I'm coming to you from the smart land in the heartland of Scotland. Yes, Glasgow, the smartest city in the UK. Not by intelligence, no, no, no. The surveillance, of course. Yes, I am in the belly of the technological beast, and I'm coming to you live from the number one network, the one and only Truth Frequency Radio, TFRLive.com. Big shout out to everyone over on TFR Live. If you want to show some love to myself and the network, you can go and sign up for the full archive of not just my show, but every other show on the network. And I've got over 1,200 shows alone. Just go to my archive page, click join on there, and you can have access to all of it. Jordan Maxwell in the early days. Who else have we had? There's too many to list. Far too many to list. Go and check it all out over at tfrlive.com/chat. No, that's the chat room. /Kev Baker. I'll get it right in the end. And the reason I got that wrong there is because I'm super excited. Yes, indeed. We have got Max from Germany back on the broadcast today. And that's not going to be the only Max that appears on the Kev Baker show this week. Because tomorrow, I'm really looking forward to this, and I hope you are as well. It is The Conversation with Max Egan, all the way from Australia, right here on your number one network tomorrow on the Kev Baker show. Same time, same place as today. And on Thursday, to round out what's been an absolutely barnstormer of a week so far. And we've only just got started. Wait till we get into tonight's information. But on Thursday, we've got the spiritual warrior, Bill Bean. He'll be coming along. And he was watching the Super Bowl, so he was, and shocked and disgusted at some of what he's seen during the halftime show. We'll get into that with Bill on Thursday. And then next week, we have got somebody coming onto the show who claims to be the person, the actual person who really wrote The Matrix. You don't want to miss that show on Monday, right here. And then Tuesday next week, I think it's Tuesday. I'll say Tuesday just now, but to be confirmed, Ryan Gable is going to be coming back onto the Kev Baker show, ladies and gentlemen. So it is all happening right here. I would say mark your calendars, but all you have to know is be here, same time, same place, every day, Monday through Thursday. And then on Friday, if that's not enough for you, I'm back with Freaky Friday. I don't know. I'm good to you lot out there. I truly am. Or I'm bad to you, making you listen to all of me all of this time. I don't know. So less from me and back into what is going to be a really, really good show tonight. And I can say that confidently before we set off on this show, because I've been joined now not once but twice by with Max from Germany. Max called into the show and he goes by the name of Black Templar out there in the chat room. But he caught my attention early on with his comments. And then when we initially spoke to him and he gave us some of his woo on the show, well, time after time, Max has come on and he's delivered. He really has. He's talked to us about the ancient texts, how to interpret them, some interpretations that we may have been familiar with. However, when you dig deeper, they're actually based on a lie. Wasn't quite written the way that we sometimes think. But that doesn't take away any of the woo, because, for example, on his first time here as our special guest, he kind of wrapped up the whole show with the ultimate mic drop. He was talking to us about the Edda Scrolls, the Viking myths and legends, and within those texts, when it's talking about Valhalla and everything else, well, in there is encoded another story. And it's a story that really, we think, relates to high technology. And I certainly hadn't heard that anywhere else before. And I know a lot of you out there hadn't heard it either, because you got in touch with me. Well, get set, because we're going to be breaking more big connections tonight right here on the show with Max from Germany. Welcome back, Max. And we were just saying before we got started there, you know, we really are alive and living in a very, very historic time. Perhaps we don't even appreciate just how historic the time is. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, of course, Kev. And first of all, hi to all listeners on Through Frequency Radio, and of course, hi to the YouTube crowd watching live at the moment. And indeed, definitely, it's a kind of weird time because basically, at least in my opinion, what we are seeing is that beginning where the downward spiral that it seems humanity has been in for so long slowly starts to change pace and also starts to slowly change its direction back into a kind of like upward movement. Because if you just all the problems and all the negative stuff that happens today around the world, put that aside and just have a look at what science is slowly starting to discover or also rediscover, stuff we didn't even dream about a few years ago, like all that quantum space, all the genetics, and of course also all the archaeology, all the stuff we start to find out about ancient cultures. More and more stuff surfaces that questions the picture we had so far about the ancient times, and it becomes more and more widespread among people, that knowledge. I mean, imagine a show like Ancient Aliens would have been aired like 50 years ago. People would just simply have said, come on, that's nothing else but bedtime stories.
Yeah, you think about Eric von Donigan, you know, he was kind of laughed at when he came out and proposed his Chariots of the Gods kind of theory.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, they basically showed him off like some kind of a freak with completely outlandish ideas no one would ever find any evidence for, or nobody with a sound mind could believe. And in our days, at least in part, that stuff is almost common knowledge, that there's at least the possibility that we have traces of ET visitors on Earth from way back in time.
Absolutely, brother, absolutely. Now, for anyone out there who might not have heard the show last week, I urge you to go on over to my channel. Not right now, I'd love for you to stay and listen to this, but you know, it's really going to be more informative. It will string better together. If you go back and you find the Ancient Eastern Mysteries show from last week, and we're going to be continuing on from there because Max has put together a number of PDFs, and I'll be certainly referring to them as Max is going through them today. And as I promised, after today's show, once we've basically concluded this, I'll be publishing my first article on the Kev Baker Show website for a long time, way long overdue. It's all thanks to Max's material, his writings, his links, the images he's used in the PDF. But it gives me a good excuse to get posting again. And this is the kind of information, folks, that I really think there's a lot to be gleaned from. You know, there's so much in what you've put together here, Max. I'm going to give you a lot of credit, dude, because you really have. I've been listening to podcasts like the show I do here for years, Coast to Coast, Clyde Lewis, you name it, I've been there. And I love ancient woo. Anytime you see something about the ancient world, I'm there. Don't even have to agree with any of it to enjoy it. However, you sir, you've been putting dots together that I haven't heard before. And whether it's factual what you're onto or not, I mean, that's besides the point for me, really, because you're showing a different level of thinking. And I can follow on where you're going when you decode the numbers and everything else. And I truly do think, from the bottom of my heart, you are uncovering, not anything new, you're uncovering what was left for us.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I'm also just, for the most part, also just compiling. Because a lot of the stuff that I'm presenting here is in the end also not kind of like my first-hand discoveries, but it's basically reviewing what's out there,
Yep.
all the sources, and somehow there seems to be a few red lines that they all follow along, and I'm trying to basically draw the bigger picture, if that's possible anyway, because I'm sure you can't ever get any aspect into it, and it always remains up to a certain part pure speculation.
Yep.
But there's probabilities. And in some cases, these probabilities, because there's at least some evidence, as we also will see today, that those probabilities are maybe quite close to reality, even though we may not scientifically be able to prove it yet.
Very close to reality.
But
now,
who knows, maybe 5 years, 10 years, 15 years on from now, who knows what then will have become fact, and what will be considered fiction again.
exactly.
That was seen as fact for years.
A very good point.
So,
a very good point. Now, I want to dive into these PDFs because I'm very conscious of our time, and I don't want anything to get missed out. So we're going to
so
one.
last,
Yeah.
that part on cosmogony, that's number 3.
Yep.
Because that's where we left off last time with that stanza.
Yeah, we were going through the stanzas, weren't we?
Yeah, from the Book of John. As far as that Book of John goes, because that's the one text Blavatsky refers to that is until today shrouded in mystery. I've had a bit of luck researching the web. As it seems, there is some evidence surfacing that might point us towards actually existing text from Tibet, which means that the books of John are, as far as it looks to me, definitely not a complete made-up from Blavatsky's imagination. That was one of the big points her critics always had, like, yeah, you can't show us those books of John. Where did you get that stanzas from? You must have come up with them yourself. It's been your imagination, your vivid fantasy combined with your occult knowledge and so mythological knowledge. And now there's some evidence that links those books of John to some of the old Tibetan sacred texts that are known today as, for example, the Kyute, and also a, what was it, a tantric system, which even the Dalai Lama speaks of. And as it seems, the Book of John must be kind of like an uncensored or secret version of a commentary to those Kyute texts or whatever. So there's some truth to it, as it seems. So in the end, they are factual, as far as I can say.
There's a lot of fact woven in with myth and legend, and that's where it gets a bit hard to pick out what's factual,
yeah, especially
what's not.
Because of those stanzas of John, that Book of John. There's said to be only one copy in existence, and it must be held somewhere in a Tibetan monastery. Or
in a Rothschild library.
Maybe, who knows? Or
Probably.
Perhaps the Vatican does have some copy in its archives. Who knows?
now, Max, this here. Oweho. Now that looks like...
the primal rootless root of all. Maybe it even tries to give a certain sound or vibration.
Now, is this what you would call is this the vibration? Is this the noise?
Maybe it's perhaps the attempt of somehow putting that pure primal vibration, what it would sound like, into human voice. Okay. Don't know how successful they are with that. I also don't know how that Oweaohu would have been spoken out in the language it was actually written down in, which is a completely unknown language called Sensar, according to Blavatsky, even older than Sanskrit. So who knows?
Wow. Yeah, so what is this then? Talk to us about this. You've got a lot written down here, the animating principle electrifying every atom
Yeah,
into
of course,
life.
that Fohat is basically like that breath of life. If there's no Fohat, basically you wouldn't have any living thing. You even wouldn't have inanimate matter, because that Fohat is basically that transmission point between what you could call a pure energy form or a thought form and actual
Solid.
material,
Yeah.
solid manifestation, or even energetic manifestation.
I like the whole electrifying thing
It's-
because I'm big into listening on the Thunderbolts project, and they talk about the electric nature of the universe.
Yeah, and I somehow have that strong feeling that this Fohat may also be in some way connected to what Nikola Tesla was talking about. Even
Yeah.
though I'm no expert on physics, uh, in many ways it seems to be close to those ideas that Tesla had. For example, that idea of an ubiquitous, all-permeating ether through which all energy is transmitted as a sort of kind of like, as I understand it, like a standing wave.
Yep.
With, for example, light being nothing else but sort of kind of like distortion in the field.
Yep.
For example, I mean, I'm no expert on this, but it somehow sounds like that concept of Fohat has to do with what Tesla was trying to prove in a scientific way, or has proven by his experiments.
Yeah, it definitely looks like Tesla was describing the same thing in the language available to him at his time. You know,
Yeah, sure. And,
yeah.
and Blavatsky tried to explain that word Fohat in her words, basically, when she says that this Fohat is the link between spirit and matter, subject and object, that it's felt as the magnetic and active force generated by anything that is basically acting as a magnet, or even if you say take magnet not only as a material magnet, but also as a form of, for example, energy, concentrated energy, like an emotion.
See,
You
I was
start to
going to say,
attract
because I was
things.
going to say to you, you know, even our thoughts could generate that standing wave.
I mean,
that could affect the fields out there, you know?
Yeah, sure. And what a lot of people don't know, I mean, the brain has its electromagnetic field, but the strongest electromagnetic field in our bodies is created by the heart. The heart's electromagnetic field is, how much? I think it's by a few thousand times bigger than and stronger than that our brain creates.
I knew it was stronger, but I didn't realize it was quite that
Yeah,
powerful.
its magnitude's more powerful. And if you have a look at the Hindu sciences, like yoga, when you look at the work with all the chakras in the human body, those energy centers, basically what happens is that you start to unify the upper group of energy centers, which means third eye, thyroid chakra or throat chakra, and basically the heart chakra, which is the focal point for all of those chakras. And you try to bring those upper chakras down to the heart, while also basically at the same time activating the other chakras in the lower half of the body, which means you start with the root chakra, which is known as the Muladhara chakra. That's located roughly at the perineum. That's the spot between the anus and your flappy parts.
Yes.
Yeah, and from there on, next chakra that comes bit higher from the root chakra is the chakra for the sexual organs. Then you have the next step upwards, chakra close above the navel around, that's like the solar plexus. And then comes the heart. And so basically, that's just a very rough description of those 7 chakras in total. So if you have those upper triangle of chakras coming downwards to the heart and the other ones upwards, those energies, they'll meet. And then you'll get what the yogis describe as basically that moment of enlightenment, when that energy that is said to be coiled up at the base of your spine, it's known as the kundalini. It's usually shown as a snake.
Yeah.
When this energy will start to travel freely up through all the chakras, bringing them basically in line and connecting up to your third eye, between the eyebrows. And from there on, there's one chakra above your head that's outside the body, an energy center. And once you've gotten far enough in energizing all your body's chakras and also have reached the right set of mind and are confident enough basically to take that plunge into nothingness as they describe it, you'll make the connection to that upper chakra, and that will lead to an ecstatic experience, basically as if you would be completely high on an extreme strong dose of DMT or LSD.
Wow.
And you can even have that permanent form of ecstasy, as it seems. Some of the gurus claim they are basically 24/7 on the trip.
Wow, and I suppose if you can get that right part of your brain working, then why not?
The pineal gland, which is associated as the organ that is actually the third eye, that's the organ in our brain that creates, as it seems, DMT, one of the most illegal hallucinogenic substances in the world.
And of course, over here, you know, more so America, really, in the fluoride in the water.
For example,
your pineal gland over time, it naturally becomes calcified, and I imagine the way the people live in, you know, over in Tibet, India, these places. I mean, I don't know, but do they suffer from less calcification because of their diet, their water, things like that, Max?
I think it depends, because if you look at the really big Indian towns, for example, you'll have the same electromagnetic pollution that we have.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
You do have the same environmental pollution. And of course, you are also at those places, at least today, you basically get the same kind of fast junk food. You get the same artificial ingredients in your food. I think where people are still quite uninfluenced by all those effects is perhaps somewhere high up in the Himalayan mountains or in some remote monastery in Tibet or so.
Do you still get the Tibetan monks? I mean, are they still a thing? Is that still happening? Because I know you got the whole China-Tibet thing going on.
Yeah, it's still a problem.
Yeah.
It's still a problem over there in Tibet. And I think that won't stop so soon, because they regard Tibet as rightful part of China, and as long as they don't acknowledge the independence of the Tibetan people,
yeah, it's just
I guess they
going
won't
on.
let loose. Mm.
Yeah.
But just as a short side notice for everyone interested in getting his pineal gland back in shape, there's a few possibilities, because, I mean, completely cutting out all magnetic fields around you and so on, that's impossible nowadays. You'd basically have to move somewhere very remote and start living only on completely raw organic foods and whatsoever, keeping a strict diet and so on. But there's a few tweaks with which even in our modern world you can help your pineal gland. For example, overnight when you sleep, turn off your cell phone, turn off your Wi-Fi, turn off as much of the electrical systems in your home as you can, to give it at least a few hours of relief. Try to sleep in the dark, which also means those little LED lights you usually have on your TV set, maybe your computer or so, that still keep blinking and so on. Try to shut them off. Try to keep light away from your body and basically also from your pineal gland, because as long as your body receives the impression of light even while you're sleeping, your pineal gland will up to a degree work as if it was daytime, because it perceives light. You can try to get into a healthier diet. if that's an option for you, cause
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. There we go, folks. There we go. Yeah, that's
first segment already gone.
yeah, that sneaked up on me there, man. I didn't even realize we were coming up on a break. But I see Mammoth over there in the chat room. I know she'll have been really looking forward to this show. We've got Sid in there as well. We've got the Optimist. We've got the Maniac Nahenius. And he's asking, what is the topic? We are looking to the East, the ancient East. And we're finding signs and wonders and mysteries that all point towards high technology. And cycles. And cycles are really important because I think Max would agree with me that we're in a very, very interesting part of our cycle right now. And yeah, I find it ironic now that it's a Chinese proverb that says, may you live in the most interesting of times. Well, yeah, like I say, how ironic that's a Chinese proverb.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those proverbs like the most terrible fate is always one's own.
Yep. I was reading through a few of these proverbs the other day. There's some really good ones. There's also some really like self-explanatory ones. And there's the odd one that really, I think they must have been maybe taking a little bit too much mushrooms or something when they were making them up. But Max, we're going to be coming back after the break. I'm just going to get a quick drink. I'm going to refresh myself, ready for part 2 of today's show. Folks, remember, we'll be having our members-only stream on Sunday. If you want to support the channel, if you want to go that extra mile and show even more faith in me than you already do, please click the join button. We've got super chats, we've got stickers, we've also got my personal favourite, the PayPal, but none of that's necessary. You're all equally welcome here, and we'll be getting right into it after we play some really cheap and cheesy tunes. It's what we do here on the Kev Baker Show, right? We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, indeed. Moving into the second part of today's show already. I can't believe it. Part 2 here with Max from Germany. And tonight we're looking east. And we're looking way, way back in time. We're getting into the hidden knowledge of the ancient East. This is part 2 of a show that we started last week with Max. I'm so glad he's here with us again today. All the way from Germany, an undisclosed location. We've got to make it sound more exciting than it is. People love all that. But Max, we had a good opening to the show there. We were talking towards the end about Tibet, the Tibetan monks, and Just think how ridiculous that is, that China have got an issue with probably some of the most peaceful warriors on earth. Those Tibetan monks, they must be such a thorn in the Chinese side.
Yeah, that's the communist ideology, which is, as we all know, completely atheistic. Anything that's higher than the party, as far as law and moral instincts go, is bad juju for the Chinese government.
Yep, it's got to go. It's got to go.
There's another aspect to it. If the rumors are true that I've read about online, I guess I'll refer to that also with a link and a PDF file later on, as soon as we get into one of the live streams where we actually talk about ancient spacecraft from India, like the Vimanas and all that stuff. As it seems, the Chinese government managed to unearth some ancient Tibetan texts that are pretty detailed on how to build that stuff.
Whoa,
and
dude.
They are currently trying, as it seems, to implement that into their space program. Same stuff is heard for the government of India, for example. So maybe there's also, again, quite a mundane, less religious or ideological aspect to why China is so hell-bent on keeping Tibet under control.
That's a very good point. Very good point. There might still be information hidden there. There might still be information written in texts and scrolls.
Yeah, there's several books around the globe. There's, for example, still a lot of texts from India that aren't translated into English so far. I would have loved to get my hands onto some translations of them, because what's said to be in there must be really, really amazing. There's, for example, from one bigger collection of scientific texts from Vedic times that actually mainly deal with architecture. There's inside that book a chapter around about 240 pages that only deals with aircraft. Whoa. And their propulsion systems, their construction, and so on. It's sad, at least, that was contained in there. You can only find those books written in Sanskrit so far. Got no English or German translation. So it must remain a rumor, at least to me, as long as I can't read it for myself. There's an ancient Chaldean text that is said to contain also very detailed accounts on the construction of said machines. And that text, again, is not available in any translation. For example, it's said that it talks about stuff like copper coils and electronic devices and the use of crystals and so on. It must be unbelievably interesting to read that, but it's not available at present, at least.
And it just shows how this is an entirely different way of thinking, a different science, a different route to attaining the same feats that we're getting today, you know?
The only book that you can get your hands on is that notorious and infamous Vimanika Shastra. And that book has a history to it. If you should ever come across it in the web, I mean, I'll sooner or later also present it here in the stream. That dates back to around about, I think it was 1895 when it was first written down. It was dictated by an analphabet, an Hindu, and he claimed that the text that he was dictating were channeled to him by some spiritual masters that had basically reached nirvana and were outside the circle of reincarnation, basically kind of like spirit guides, and that they or one of them would have told him all those technical details that he was talking about. And that book goes in great depth into the materials to construct those Vimanas out of, and how the propulsion system has to be designed, and what weapons and systems you've got aboard, and so on. Later on, when that book came to the West, there were some crude blueprints drawn up based on the texts contained in it. And it's until today highly questionable how correct this text is. in the end, especially given the way it came into being. On the other hand, you've got rumors also around the time of another Hindu. And remember, that was a time when India still was under British rule. He is said to have constructed an actual working Vimana, although it was an unmanned one. And that thing actually is said to have at least 1 or 2 times been flown for test reasons by him. Just like you would let a balloon rise up into the air tied to a chain or a rope, he would have his device lift up from the ground. However, the English authorities got wind of it and confiscated all his stuff and accused him of manufacturing explosives because he was working with liquid mercury and stuff in his workshop.
Well,
so they had a nice
really
kind of like
now.
pretext to frame him.
Yeah, now, when we got off air last time, and I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this or not, but you bring up 1895 there. And that makes me think of when I was speaking to Walt.
I haven't looked into the link yet.
That's okay, but
sent me.
Yeah, that makes me think, and I don't know if some of our longer time listeners will remember when we had Walter Bosley on the show. And Walter's been on the Ancient Aliens, and he makes a really good presentation for a breakaway civilization, but not the kind of one that you'd think about, not one that's off-world, no silly bases, on planets we've never heard of. Nothing like that. No blue chickens. He talks about how there's literally a breakaway on this planet around us. And he goes back to the 1800s. And it's this obscure, strange club in Sonoma. I think it's in Arizona. I could be wrong there, but it's in Sonoma. And it's a German flying club, for lack of a better term, called NIMSA. And I was showing some of the diagrams that were uncovered. They were under a floorboard, just uncovered randomly, and they had all these it looked like the kind of drawings we'd been looking at with the Vermanas, didn't it?
Yeah, they look a lot like the blueprints from the Vimanika Shastra from that text. But to wrap up what we were into just before the break, just quickly on the pineal gland. So basically try to get rid of electromagnetic fields as much as you can, at least overnight when you're sleeping. Try to sleep in the dark. And if you want to detoxify the pineal gland and your body as a whole, what is said to be very effective for getting calcifications removed from the pineal gland is tamarins. And what you can also use is zeolith powder, which is a sort of volcanic mineral, and you get it as a very fine powder. You can mix it with water and drink it, and it has the ability to absorb heavy metals and other toxic substances directly in your digestive tract. So it will also, over time, start to allow your body to get rid of all the toxic inhibitors that have gotten stuck with your pineal gland, it is sad. I'm no doctor, but at least that's the info that's around.
Yeah, the pineal gland, I've always heard the pineal gland is, that's the third eye, and I've heard that it does become calcified.
That's the organic counterpart, yeah.
Yeah, so, and like you, I mean, I don't pretend to anyone I'm anything I'm not. And I'm not a doctor, but it's definitely interesting for people if they want to look into the third eye. That is some really interesting stuff right there, folks. And I tell you, there's one of those things we actually all have in common. Some may be more tuned and open than others, but we've all got a third eye in there somewhere. So yay, yes. We've all got something in common.
If you want it or not, those chakras or energy centers and that third eye and all that stuff, it's there in your body and your energy body. It's active, it's working, maybe even though you aren't conscious of it, but it's there and it's working and it's influencing you. So at least in my mind, it's definitely a sound and good idea to at least have a basic knowledge about these things, because especially what's coming up with all that 5G technology and so on, I have the big impression that this will start to interfere exactly via the organic counterparts of our chakras on an information level.
I think any man-made electrical or electrical magnetic field is something that is going to have a dulling, or more appropriately, an interference effect on our pineal.
With our system, yeah.
Now, the reason I use interference, you know, is because I've spoke about our brains being quantum before. And if we think of the big Geordie Rose alien to the altar to an alien god D-wave, right? It's got to be so cold, colder than space, because any kind of electromagnetic interference, any kind of wave at all, that's enough to cause decoherence. So at that point, all the quantum brilliance, it's lost. It all collapses. All those probabilities, all those numerous parallel dimensions gone. And just like our brain, you know, I think we would really need to shield ourselves or get somewhere where there's going to be the minimum kind of outside interference from any kind of electromagnetic field, be it from your phone, be it from any kind of electrical device. And now bear in mind, we're living on a planet where we're getting 5G, and goodness knows what other signals beam down from satellites. So it's getting harder and harder to be able to find that location, to get that quiet spot where you can have that coherence, where literally your third eye goes quantum. And just like Geordie Rose says, oh yeah, it's very much here, it's in your head, but it's also in parallel realities at the same time.
I mean, what thing that I always had, at least as a theory, is that if a human would be able to completely activate his energy body, the chakras, all that, and gain the necessary consciousness for it, I wonder if our own magnetic field, if properly trained, would be able, at least up to a certain point, to shield us from interference.
I think at one point, Max, when it was just cosmic energies out there that would have been interfering, I think maybe you're right. And again, it's highly speculatory what we're saying here. We can never prove what we're saying, but I think that might give us some level of protection, you know?
And that would also explain why they are still until today so reluctant to openly talk about what they actually know about the connections between the established biology and medical sciences and what we know about the more esoteric sciences like the Hindus have about the energy body and all that stuff. Because I'm sure there's connections. And I'm sure that there's people who know very well about these connections and know how to exploit them. And as you were speaking about the quantum stuff, that's just the perfect point to leap off into the stanzas of Jan again. That cosmogony, because we were stuck with stanza 3, when basically that first primeval matter was created after the first vibration had taken place. And just in that last line of that stanza, it says that this primeval matter, the Swapavat, sends Foha to harden the atoms. Of course, each is a part of the web, reflecting the self-existent Lord like a mirror. Each becomes eternal world. And those lines made me wonder, because have I ever seen a graphic representation of that anywhere? Now, we all know that spirals do have their own higher geometry and also in some cases called sacred geometry to them, that infinity aspect and so on. Now, if you go a step further from that normal spiral, from that infinite spiral, we know that there is a phenomenon in mathematics that's known as fractals. And you can turn those fractal equations into Mandelbrot pictures. Don't know if you ever have heard about that.
Yeah, Scott
Those
Lopez makes his own images. Yeah, his own
fractal zooms and so on. Yeah,
Yep.
where every pixel basically is again an iteration of the whole picture, and it continues spiraling endlessly, always born out of itself again.
See, I think this is one of the clues that we're in a holographic universe.
Yeah, and I mean, when it says that the self-existent Lord is basically reflected by the web, by that quantum continuum, like a mirror, and that each of these reflections and each atom basically, as it in itself is reflecting itself, it becomes an internal world. Basically, every atom contains again the complete universe.
Yeah, every one pixel contains all of the information from all of the picture,
and all is interconnected. And now, if you go a step further, we know that there must be some sort of absolute zero, an absolute 0 point, where it all starts. One interconnecting point, a big intersection. And just I know I'm going to stretch the imagination of some people out there, maybe.
Good. That's what it needs, Max. That's what I want. Do it to them.
So we all know the Mobius loop, that infinity loop.
Yep.
That is twisted in itself. Now imagine you take a whole incountable bunch of Mobius loops, and just at the intersection point of each Mobius loop, you put them together, just like and say that the center is that absolute 0. All Mobius loops converge basically in that center, and they're spreading out from that center of absolute 0. And let's assume those Mobius loops are made up out of unbelievably complex infinite fractals.
Yep.
Wouldn't that be kind of like a multiverse?
Yeah.
You would have a toroid shape like a donut. In the center you have that total 0, and that center is basically also at the same time that intersecting point in the Mobius loop.
Yep.
And of each and every Mobius loop contained in the toroid. So maybe that's what they are alluding with, that reflecting the self-existent Lord like a mirror, each becomes eternal world and so on. I mean, maybe far-fetched, but...
No, dude, no, not... There is no such thing as far-fetched on the Kev Baker Show. That there, sir, but that's a myth. Anything being far-fetched, that in itself, no, that's a bridge too far. We accept anything here, dude. I like that. I like the thinking. Especially the fractals, because...
And the deeper basically you go down in those fractals, the more frequent and faster the iteration will become, because the amplitude gets lower and lower and lower. It starts vibrating quicker and quicker as it gets closer to that 0 point, basically.
Yep.
In the end. And that would also fit right in with some of the Asian concepts of matter and energy, where basically as finer an energy is, or as less material something is, the smaller its amplitude becomes. And the vibration basically rises, and as more solid something is, the lower the amplitude is, the slower it's vibrating.
Yeah, it's you hear it said all the time. I know people will say this is new agey, but but some, like, raising your vibration. There's a lot to be said in that one phrase. I mean, there.
The idea behind that basically, and that goes in accord also with the Eastern doctrines and teachings. If you manage to get that vibration to that unbelievably small amplitude, where it really vibrates so extremely fast that it basically in the end actually is only a flat line.
Well, think about it another way as well, Max. Yeah, think about it another way as well. You know, when you heat water up, you know, you've got water, you've got the H2O in there, and you start to boil it, and the molecules, they start to move around faster. That raises the temperature. And eventually you're going to hit a point where it turns into gas again. But if you were to keep heating and heating and heating and heating, you go from gas into the plasma. Now, yeah, I get where you're coming from here, dude.
Yeah, you're basically transmuting different.
And it's all about that vibration. It's all about that quickening, yeah.
That quickening, sure. That's what the alchemists called the transmutation.
Well,
you have to turn up the heat in the alembic, in the flask, in order to basically distillate the substance, which in this case it's a symbolical language that was used at the time, because otherwise the church would have called them heretics, because they would have basically offered a worldview that didn't fit with the church. They basically describe the same for the human mind with that images. You have to turn up the heat and basically start a process of refining your spirit by putting it through different stages of refinement.
And everything's all connected, right? You know, because of this fractal nature of reality. And then isn't it interesting, right, how here we are now, we've all at one time or other, whether it's because we're getting older or not, we've all said how things are speeding up, how times are speeding up, how, you know, events are getting more intense and they're closer together. And that again sounds like this, the speeding up of things, the vibration moving, getting ready to transmute, to change into a new age.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, those stanzas of John get even weirder, because it continues, "Listen, ye son of the earth, to your instructors, the sons of the fire. Learn there is neither first nor last, for all is one, number issued from no number. Learn what we who descend from the primordial seven, we who are born from the primordial flame, have learned from our fathers."
That's interesting, because you've got the 7 days of creation in the Bible.
Yep. "From the effulgency of light, the ray of the ever darkness, sprung in space, the reawakened energies. The one from the egg, the 6 and the 5, then the 3, the 1, the 4, the 1, the 5, the twice 7, the sum total. And these are the essences, the flames, the elements, the builders, the numbers, the arupa, the rupa, and the force of divine man. The sum total, and from the divine man emanated the forms, the sparks, the sacred animals, and the messengers of the sacred fathers within the holy four. This was the army of the voice. The divine mother of the seven, the sparks of the seven are subject to, and the servants of the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh of the seven. These sparks are called spheres, triangles, cubes, lines, and modulars. For thus stands the eternal Nidana, the Oyahu, which is darkness, the boundless or the no number, and so on. And then it says that this primal matter, this Adinidana Swabhavat, is one. The voice of the Lord Swabhavat, the number for he is 1 and 9. The formless square, and these three enclosed within the circle, basically, that's how it's given in the text, are the sacred four, and the 10 are the Arupa universe. Then come the sons, the 7 fighters, the 1, the 8th left out, and his breath, which is the light maker. Then the second 7, who are the Lipika, produced by the 3. The rejected son is 1. The sons are countless. So here we basically see that they get into kind of almost Kabbalistic.
There's a lot of numbers,
or number magic,
a lot of numbers encoded in there.
Now that army of the voice, according to Blavatsky, must be understood as the hierarchies of the gods. In Tibet, they are called the Dhyan Kohans, and in Hindi, they are called Devas. And these are basically the intelligent powers in nature, she says. And that army of the voice is also closely connected with the mystery of sound and speech as an effect and corollary of the cause, which is basically divine thought. So we do have again that creation happens through vibration. Those Sons of Fire, she says, are basically the first beings or minds which evolved from that primordial fire that Stanza 3 talked about.
Yeah.
And
we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Oh, wow. Well, that's 2 breaks that I've missed sneaking up on us today. But yeah, Max, I mean, this is that stanza that we went through there in particular. I mean, there's a lot of numbers in there.
Yeah, and there's also an explanation to it coming up after the break.
I was going to say, you know, I'm sure these numbers.
Of course.
See, Max has got it covered. He has got it covered. But yeah, when you're not doing this, Max, since we're on the break here, I mean, what do you like to get into? What are your hobbies, man? What do you usually find yourself doing to pass the time in this crazy world?
Basically, as far as hobbies go, it's basically with like all kind of hobbies and on and off, because there's so many. Of course, I enjoy reading, or nowadays, audiobooks.
Yeah, it can't be audiobooks, man. They're brilliant.
Definitely great. What I'm also a lot into is fantasy and sci-fi stuff. As you can already guess by my name, perhaps.
Well, why don't you explain that to the listeners, Black Templar?
Yeah, sure.
Where's this come from?
That was just what I wanted to come up with. Some may perhaps already have guessed just by the name. I also like Warhammer 40k a lot. That whole universe, the tabletop and the miniatures and painting them and so on, as well as the giant vast sci-fi universe created around the tabletop game. In my eyes, already that universe alone is actually even more interesting than just painting the miniatures or playing against friends.
Yeah.
In some skirmish match on the tables and throwing the dice. Especially because 40k is up to a big part a really, really nice and also biting satire on our modern civilization, and also all the taboos we have and all the political correctness, because at least until today, Games Workshop, that's the guys who own all that Warhammer 40k franchise, so far they haven't bowed down. Excellent.
They haven't got woke. That's what I like to hear.
I mean, look at the Imperium of Man.
I know.
In Warhammer 40k, I mean, that's basically a mix between a radical religious belief that is used to enforce a totalitarian, almost fascist regime that basically only knows the use of force and its vast armies as basically the only way of diplomacy in the universe, because they regard everything alien as inferior, unclean, and God knows what. Then you have, for example, the Tau. The Tau are basically like Asians in space, communist Asians in space, where they all subject themselves to the greater good of the whole people.
Yeah, I'm actually quite worried about you talking about this, because there's probably one of these cancel culture mob that follow me, and now they're thinking, oh, listen to this, there's a whole new thing that we can go and try and cancel. It's full of toxicity.
They already tried that with 40k, but so far the community has been rather resilient, because on one hand, with all that tongue-in-cheek incorrectness that's contained in there, that system and also the universe in itself is absolutely tolerant, because there's nothing you can't find. I mean, when people always complain about the lack of certain role models being available in computer games or so, just look at 40k. You've got a whole bunch of extremely male characters.
Here we go, brother. We can pick this up on the next break.
Yeah, sure.
This is good. Here we go. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, moving into hour number 2 already on today's Kev Baker show with Max from Germany. And I'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same place, with Max Egan from Australia. So please be here for that show tomorrow. So we're moving into hour number 2. We were just going over stanza number 4. Max, let people know where these stanzas they come from. Is it the Book of Jan?
Yeah, the Book of Jan, and they are also known as the Stanzas of Jan. And this book, as it appears, is of Tibetan origin, even though, except for Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, somewhere towards the end of the 19th century, no one else so far has ever laid his eyes upon that text again. For many, many years, it was basically regarded as completely made up by her. But as it seems, some evidence has surfaced that connects those stanzas of Jan or the Book of Jan to some Tibetan religious texts that are at least known to exist in our days for sure. However, that's again also texts that are in part at least, or certain versions of it are still kept secret. You won't get a look at them, at least not at least as long aren't part of some inner circle or whatever within that community of Tibetan monks. So all we know about that book basically and its contents is coming from Blavatsky in the end. So we have to trust her reproduction of those texts. I mean, when she went to India and stayed there for some time, she also claimed to have been to Tibet, and that was when she had been given access to those books by the secret masters and so on. People didn't believe her at the time, of course, because India and Tibet, that basically was terra incognita to the Westerners, and already the idea of a woman traveling to those remote countries and being given access by the political and religious leaders there to some kind of higher knowledge or extremely sacred and well-guarded texts, and getting even explanations on how to interpret them and so on, that was unbelievable at the time.
Yeah, they say that men are toxic today. Wow. Go back to the time of Blavatsky and try that out for toxicity, I'm telling you. Yes, indeed.
We always have those set pictures about which time must have been like this or that when you lived in that time. I guess there always were some kind of like loopholes, niches, bolt holes, where you could have your freedom.
Yeah.
However, those stanzas we just got through.
Yeah, the numbers.
With the numbers.
Yeah.
First of all, it talks about, among other things, an entity known as Lipika. So what are Lipikas? Lipikas are scribes. And these are kind of like divine beings. And these are directly connected to a karma, basically the law of cause and action, or action and reaction, and so on. And they are said to be documenting all and everything that happens in the universe. And they are basically the ones that are, by documenting those actions that happen, the ones that allow basically all the causes to come from the actions. In the end, as far as I understand it. But what's more interesting is the numbers that are given in those lines. So Blavatsky says that the one from the egg, the 6 and the 5, because you have to imagine the egg as a circle, which means 0. You get the number 1065, and that is the value of the firstborn, according to her, which will later on become basically a male and female principle. So those first beings are more or less endogenous, to my understanding. Now, the question is, of course, as she asks, who answers to the numbers 7, 14, and 21 respectively? And she says that that stuff goes basically along with the Sephirot, which is Kabbalah. And it said that only 7, including the synthetic Sephirah of the Triad, from which they spring, so thus from, oh my gosh, Hiranyagarbha or Prajapati,
You
the
done
triune,
well.
those primeval Vedic Trimurti, Agni, Vayu, and Surya. It's a trinity, basically, a Vedic trinity. Agni is known to me, it's the god of fire. And they emanate the other 7, or again 10, if you separate the first 3, which exist in the 1 and 1 in 3, all moreover being comprehended with that one supreme parama called Guya, or secret, and Sarvatma, the super soul. The 7 lords of being lie concealed in Sarvatma, like thoughts in one brain.
We're going to Brian, give it 2 seconds. Here we go. No, thank you, and that's Shermanator. Thank you, Shermanator. Sorry about that, Max. Yes, we were.
Yeah, no problem.
You were in these numbers. I'm just trying to pay attention here because I can see what's coming. I can see what we're building up to here, and I'm flabbergasted. Continue, my friend. Continue.
So she says that this basically corresponds to the Sephirot from Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah. It's either 7 when counting from the upper triad headed by Kether, or 10 exoterically. In the Mahabharata, the Prajapati are 21 in number, or 10, 6, and 5, which again gives 1065. And this again she interprets, don't know how she comes to that, as thrice 7. So we have 777, and that's usually.
That's the 1065. If you had 10 and 6 and 5, that gives you 21. And the square root of 21 would be, no, it's not the square root. No, but it is 3 times 7, thrice 7.
Yeah, and from that she deducts a numerical hierarchy of the devas, of course. But which is more interesting is that this number she comes to, if you put that 3, the 1, the 4, the 1, the 5 in the totality twice 7, she says you get 3. What do we have? 31415, 31,415. So she says that is the rope of angels, the rope that hedges off the phenomena from the noumenal cosmos, not falling with the range of our present objective consciousness. And this number, when not enlarged by permutation and expansion, is ever 31,415 anagrammatically and kabbalistically, being both the number of the circle and the mystic swastika. The twice 7 once more, for whatever way the 2 sets of figures are counted, when added separately, one figure after another, whether crossways from right or from left, will always yield 14. Mathematically, they present or represent the well-known calculation, namely that the ratio of the diameter to the circumference of a circle is as 1 to 3.1415, or the value of the pi, as this ratio is called. So they've hidden again some geometrical knowledge in there.
That is astounding, dude.
They knew that, as it seems. And the 4 is represented in the occult numerals by the tetrakis.
Oh, come on, Max. Everyone knows these are just old. They're just pieces of writings. They meant nothing. They were just people bored in a cave, you know.
And it's for sure just coincidence that the Vedic texts and the Kabbalah and the Tibetan texts talk about the same sacred geometry.
Just coincidence. Of course it is. Yes. So then
Blavatsky says that sacred or perfect square is one and the same thing, and has the one and the same significance in Brahmanism, Buddhism, Kabbalah, Egyptian, Chaldean, and other numerical systems.
And here we have this common or a base knowledge.
And she even shows that in the Kabbalah, the same numbers are the value of Jehovah.
Wow.
Yotevauhe. 10, 6, and 5, or again, thrice 7, 21. So they seem to have the same roots.
No, Max. No, it's all coincidence. You better
Yeah.
believe they've got the same roots, folks. And I like how you explained it as well. Different people would have had to encode it, dress it up, retell the story in different ways, Max, right? Depending on the time and the culture and the civilization.
Yeah, of course, there also happened what in our days would be called cultural appropriation. I mean, a lot of that knowledge was later on, step by step, becoming part of other different cultures, and they claimed it for their own. They changed some of the stories. They changed the timelines. You can see that with the Old Testament. You can see that with the Jewish texts and so on. It's just a natural thing that occurs. Look, we have that knowledge, and wouldn't it be cool if it was ours? Or
Yep.
maybe if we have forgotten where it came from, so we come up with some new stories where we got it from and why it's holy.
Yep. Is it stanza 5 now?
We have stanza 5, yeah.
Yeah.
The primordial 7, the first 7 breaths of the dragon of wisdom, produce in their turn from the holy circumgyrating breaths the fiery whirlwind. Now think about our Milky Way.
Yep. Yep.
They make of him the messenger of their will. The Geo becomes Fohat, the swift son of the divine sons, whose sons are the Lipika, runs circular errands. Fohat is the steed and the thought is the rider. Again, it's basically how to create matter from thought.
Yeah.
He passes like lightning through the fiery clouds, takes 3 and 5 and 7 strides through the 7 regions above and the 7 below. This, by the way, if I'm not mistaken, also again fits together with the way that Zoroastrianism as well as the Kabbalah structures the universe or the planes of existence.
Yeah, this is really interesting stuff. I mean, this is like when me and Joe talk about, myself and Joe often talk about energy to matter conversion. And that's pretty much what this is sounding like, And
this Fohat that those intelligences use to bring matter into being, he passes like lightning. We had the fiery crowds, and then he lifts his voice and calls the innumerable sparks and joins them. He is their guiding spirit and leader. When he commences work, he separates the sparks of the lower kingdom that float and thrill with joy in their radiant dwellings, and forms therewith the germs of wheels. And wheels are planets and stars.
In
this text.
Okay.
He places them in the 6 directions of space, and one in the middle, the central wheel. So do we have again an illusion or a symbol for the center of the Milky Way, the black hole? Once having been a central sun, perhaps?
So this is putting forward that could have been a central sun in our solar system.
Mm-hmm. And this central sun, which is today a black hole, this is again, as it seems, connected to that mysterious black sun.
The mysterious black sun.
Black sun you usually hear about when you talk about the occult stuff that went on with the bad guys in Germany.
Yes, indeed.
Because it's said that this black sun still has some kind of influence in the cosmos, and that its energy still can be harnessed. And it will again start with the end of the Kali Yuga and the coming of the next golden age. Its influence will again start to grow and become available to humanity.
Yeah, because if it wasn't for that unfortunate period, around World War II.
Yes, that knowledge would be way better understood and would be way more fast spread and researched.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of us
not hushed up.
Instead of us totally reacting, almost being repulsed at the sight of that. We've been programmed to think that, but in reality, before that was taken and hijacked and turned into what we think it is today by the bad guys, this was something that was pretty positive. I mean, this was like a sun symbol.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to go more into the conspiracy realm of things, I think up to a certain point that's deliberate.
Yeah,
They
I think
want
so as well. Yeah.
they want people kept away from that knowledge that there is this kind of positive energy connected to it. Actually, they want to keep it hushed up, and they want to keep it that aura of what would you call it?
Evil.
Of evil, yeah, that aura of evil.
Yeah. There's no other word
Because
for it, Max.
what would happen if people would start to experiment with the black sun stuff that you can find, like meditations and so on, get perhaps something channeled, get in touch with those energies, and as they are creative and as it seems more like going up the spiral than downwards, this is basically in direct contradiction and also in direct
Now, Max, would these
conflict with.
Yeah, would these be the same entities that the Thule Society, the Thule Society were talking to?
The Thule Society weren't actually talking to entities. The Thule Society, you could call basically a how would you best describe it? Let's say it's a Freemason lodge,
Okay.
and that Freemason lodge simply changed the Jewish and Egyptian symbology for Norse symbology,
Okay.
and was discussing basically their version of a secret doctrine based on what we are talking today.
I got you. Okay. So where
The
did
theosophy stuff that the Amarnan Orden came up with, that idea of an basically global ancient Aryan religion that was universal, and which was basically not just a religion but also in the end a science, a real science where it was not a matter of believing but a matter of fact, that they had that control over energy, that they were basically almost godlike gigantic beings and so on, and they intermixed it with their racial ideas. They mixed that with that idea that there were 5-meter tall, blonde, blue-eyed giants that were ruling the world, and all other creatures were inferior and whatsoever they dreamt up in their minds. They mixed that all together.
Yeah, they took something
in those
real,
circles,
yeah, and put their
function,
idea into it. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Thule Society, they basically also were sort of a political circle that was basically acting almost in a clandestine way to prepare a renaissance of an authoritarian rule in Germany. Because they never had gotten basically over the loss of the German Empire, because there was no Emperor Wilhelm left. There was no monarchy. So they sought foreign replacement. And basically when they found Hitler and saw that he was quite apt at speaking and working as a demagogue, they started to build him up. And he was already also influenced by all those mythological ideas and that crude racial ideology connected to it at the time. So it was easy to get him basically as the head of a new movement that would lead to an authoritarian regime that they saw as fitting for the German people.
They just didn't account on him starting to drink his own Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And taking it way too far.
Up to a point, yes.
Yeah.
And there may be also some evidence, as the Thule Society also was, with its early members and so on, also connected to different intelligence services around the globe. They were connected to English Freemasonry, Scottish Rite, and so on. There's a big question mark in the room in how far did certain circles perhaps understand that there was knowledge around in Germany that might lead to a demise of their future plans if they don't manage to get control over that knowledge and make it evil. And then at some point in time, I mean, with all those interconnections, they must have planted a seed of corruption inside those early circles from which National Socialism developed. They somehow managed to get them onto a destructive and negative track. They made them take the wrong turn at some point in time. at least in my opinion, and early on
No, I absolutely
already.
I hear what you're saying there. I do hear what you're saying. And it's almost, it's just like me saying, you know, Hitler drinking his own Kool-Aid, you know, something happened somewhere where it went in a different direction.
And that must have been very early on. And it came to unfold in those 15 years, leading not only to a Second World War and an Holocaust, but it also led to getting all that ancient knowledge labeled as evil.
Yeah.
Basically. And everything that's related to it.
What a brilliant and genius way to hide.
It's the good old upside down.
Yeah, exactly. To hide the most important information ever. Don't just actually hide it, but hide it in plain sight, and then make it look like it's so dangerous, it's so evil that nobody will want to look at it.
Get it labeled as the cause for the biggest crime humanity ever has witnessed, and voila.
Dang, dude, dang. Now, let's get back into this, dude, because I could speak to you all night. I know our audience could listen to your accent all night. So could I. Over to you, man.
All right. So we were with the
we've got down to about this.
So
yeah.
We were with this. Here we are. And that Fohat, again, that breath of life, traces spiral lines to unite the sixth to the seventh. The crown, an army of the sons of light, stands at each angle, and the Lipika in the middle wheel. They say this is good. The first divine world is ready. The first is now the second. Then the divine Arupa reflects itself in Chaya Loka, the first garment of the Anupadaka. Fohat takes 5 strides and builds a winged wheel at each corner of the square for the 4 holy ones and their armies. The Lipika circumscribe the triangle, the first one the cube, the second one and the pentacle within the egg. It is the ring called pass knot for those who descend and ascend. Also for those who during the Kalpa are progressing towards the great day be with us, thus perform the Rupa and the Arupa. From 1 light 7 lights, from each one of the 7 times 7 lights. The wheels watch the ring. So Rupa and Arupa means form and formless, material and immaterial. The Lipika we already had, those divine scribes. And the Anupadaka is again that parentless or self-born being or intelligence. And Chaya or Chaya Loka is the place or home goddess or home of the goddess of shadow. She is the consort of the Hindu sun god. And the fiery wind.
So would that be the Egyptian equivalent? Would be Isis?
Maybe. And we have that fiery wind, which Blavatsky interprets as the incandescent cosmic dust, which only follows magnetically as the iron filings follow the magnet, the directing thought of the creative forces. Yet this cosmic dust is something more. For every atom in the universe has the potentiality of self-consciousness in it, and is, like the monads of Leibniz, a universe in itself and for itself. It is an atom and an angel.
There's the fractal nature again, right?
Yeah, again and again.
Yep.
The same imagery.
Yep.
And also those fiery winds that gather, it almost sounds like small particles accumulating into planets.
And even,
condensing.
Because I was brought up in the more Christian kind of faith, even when you've got God making man in his image, again, that's fractal. It's just churning out a copy of itself, right? I tell you, again, I'm just going to shut up. This is brilliant.
And then we do have that strange sentence that says, it is the ring called pass knot for those who descend and ascend. And that is the pentacle that is around the egg. I mean, that egg imaginary and symbols, like the world egg, or what we know from the Nordic religions, like that ice egg, which is represented in the rune Hagalas, which basically is that egg from which the world or universe is born. It has a border around it that you can't pass according to this line. And if you look into the other mythologies, for example, you do have the Ouroboros, which is this snake biting its own tail, the symbol of infinity. You also do have in Norse mythology the same serpent. There it's just called Jormungand, and it's said to encircle basically the whole existence, like kind of like a fence, basically. And this serpent, interestingly, is killed by Thor during Ragnarok, during the apocalypse.
We will be right back. Don't go anywhere. Oh, give me 2 seconds, folks. I hung up on Max accidentally there. Dang. There we go, Max. My bad. I clicked the wrong button. You're back
No
with
problem.
me. Yeah. I tell you what, I thought our show last week went quick. This one has gone even quicker.
Yeah.
I don't even think we're going to get on. Are we even going to get into your next like PDF that you've put together here, dude?
I'll try to get things a bit quickened up, cause
I'll try and shut up. I'm sure the audience are all sitting there going, Kev, shut the hell up.
we only got 2 stanzas, and then I'm gonna start to show you, depending on what the audience wants. Maybe we do a quick poll or so. Either we can go into the yugas, all those cyclic developments, and how those 4 yugas can be found again all over the world. Or we dive into what I would call, for example, as an evidence for the existence of higher scientific knowledge as is expressed in this ancient text.
There we go. I'm speaking on behalf of the audience. I'm calling the shots here. It's my name on the door. I'm definitely putting the foot down. We're going for the high tech. We have to.
Okay.
Yep. That's I know. I don't do it very often, but I am. I'm putting the foot down today. My name on the door. My football. Anyone that doesn't want to play can go home.
I think it's a good idea, because there's some pictures I can show.
Awesome.
There's some sound we can listen to.
Yep, I've got that as well. Yep.
Without the sound, it would be a bit pointless. And I guess it's also a nice change of pace, because we've been quite in the abstract and theoretical realm.
You see, not only do you bring all of this information, but you also have an appreciation for where the audience might be at right now. And this has been really, if it wasn't so fascinating, it probably might have been quite hard going to get through that. But when you're hearing this and the way you put it together, your accent, plus the interpretations you give with it, Max, it certainly hasn't been hard work here. It's been an absolute pleasure. It really has. I just I'm thinking, man, we might need to get you back next week to get into your next PDF.
No problem. I mean, the stuff we don't cover today, we cover the next time.
Yeah, exactly. And next week would be good to get you on. I think one of these times when we get you on, I'm going to bring Ryan Gable with me. Because Ryan Gable, he knows a lot of the occult stuff, the symbology and everything. And
I'm sure he would have some more details on what we've just read.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I love about doing this. You bring these people together. In this case, you, Ryan, and I know that Ryan's going to look at some of the stuff we've got here and see something we haven't seen. And Ryan will say something that even Ryan hasn't thought of, and you will see because of what you know. And then the audience gets the best of all worlds.
What is the strangest thing ever? I mean, I've had a German copy of the Secret Doctrine for several years. But when I started to go into the English version and started basically preparing all that stuff for the stream, suddenly when I was reading certain lines, they had such a strong resonance in me, I almost started crying in front of my screen.
Wow.
From joy, from pleasure. It was like being touched by something very, very deep inside.
Yeah, that's something in your DNA.
It's something...
Here we go, Max. Here we go. I need to bring back the network.
Resonates.
No, that's exactly the word. That's the only word. Here we go. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Final part of today's Kev Baker show with the quite brilliant Black Templar, aka Max. We're looking to the ancient East. And boy, oh boy, man, oh man, woman, oh woman, whatever else. Yeah, we're uncovering a lot of great information today, and it's so interesting that time and time again, the further you look back into all the different ancient cultures, you know, and civilizations separated not only by geography but by time as well. And they all have this commonality, this kind of golden thread that connects all of them together. I don't know if you have the entire picture. I don't know if even all the pieces of the puzzle that we're trying to put together exists. But it's great how you have to open your mind and you have to step outside of whatever your belief system is, what you were brought up with. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it's only when you step back and you look at other people's belief systems and you get that eureka moment, the aha moment. As Max was just sharing during the break, he was so moved. Not through, you know, being upset or anything bad. No, because it was like joyous. Because it was not discovering anything new. It was that rediscovery of something that people just like us left in the past. And that there, folks, is what being on this journey is all about. So, Max, we're going to get you back one day next week. I'm shameless.
For
But
sure.
you're going to take us through the next stanza now. I'm going to shut up, and then you're going to take us into some really kind of cool woo to take us out today. Over to you, brother.
Sure. So we have that sixth stanza. By the power of the mercy of the Mother of Mercy and Knowledge, Kuan Yin, the triple of Kuan Shayin, that must be Tibetan, residing in Kuan Yin Tien, Fohat, the breath of their progeny, the son of the suns, having called forth from the lower abyss, the elusive form of Xian Zhang and the seven elements. The swift and radiant one produces the seven Laya centers, against which none will prevail till the great day be with us. This means that time when the universe again ceases to exist and everything is one. And seeds the universe of these eternal foundations surrounding Xian with the elementary germs. Of the seven, first one manifested. 6 concealed, 2 manifested, 5 concealed, 3 manifested, 4 concealed, 4 produced, 3 hidden, 4 and 1 sun revealed, 2 and 1/2 concealed, 6 to be manifested, 1 led aside, lastly 7 small wheels revolving, 1 giving birth to the other. He builds them in the likeness of older wheels, placing them on the imperishable centers. How does Fohat build them? He collects the fiery dust. He makes balls of fire, runs through them and around them, infusing life thereinto, then sets them into motion, some one way, some the other way. They are cold, he makes them hot. They are dry, he makes them moist. They shine, he fans and cools them. Thus acts Fohat from one twilight to the other during 7 eternities. At the fourth round, the sons are told to create their images. 1/3 refuses, 2 obey. The curse is pronounced. They will be born on the 4th cycle, suffer and cause suffering. This is the first war. The older wheels rotated downwards and upwards. The mother's spawn filled the whole. There were battles fought between the creators and the destroyers, and battles fought for space, the seed appearing and reappearing continuously. Make thy calculations, Lanu, if thou wouldst learn the correct age of thy small wheel. Its 4th spoke is our mother. Reach the 4th fruit of the 4th path of knowledge that leads to nirvana, and thou shalt comprehend, for thou shalt see. So we hear basically about Laya centers. That's the first remarkable thing. And the Laya center in Buddhism and Hinduism and so on is a point of absolute zero. So they were talking about absolute 0 points at that time. I mean, this text, if it really is as old as it's claimed, it's way more older than pre-flood.
That's why I'm saying we're not coming up with anything new. We haven't invented or come up with any original thoughts or ideas or science. It's always been there, but just in
Yeah.
other forms, you know.
And then you have that point where basically those primal gods are told to create their images. And some of them refuse, some obey. And Blavatsky says in her interpretation, the holy youth, the gods refuse to multiply and create species after their likeness, after their kind. Because, and that's from other parts of Vedic texts, they are not fit forms, rupas, for us. So they said, no, we don't want material bodies. They have to grow. They refuse to enter the chayas, the shadows or images of inferiors. Thus had selfish feeling prevailed from the beginning, even among the gods, and they fell under the eye of the karmic lipikas. It is a universal tradition that before the physiological fall, propagation of one's kind, whether human or animal, took place through the will of the creators or the progeny. It was the fall of spirit into generation, not the fall of mortal man. It has already been stated that to become a self-conscious spirit, the latter must pass through every cycle of being, culminating in its highest point on earth in man. So basically we are in the last yuga, the most materialist yuga of all.
So the next
So we are at a culmination point.
Yeah, and the next one, if I'm interpreting this right, will be back to pure energy.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah.
As far as I understand it.
At least a far higher vibration, right?
Vibration, yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe an kind of like intermediate state between energy and material existence.
Yeah.
In the end.
Quantum, you're a wave and a particle. I'll literally be quantum Kev. There you go.
I mean, when you look at that first war, that must be, according to Blavatsky, and I also go in total accord with it, it must be the original first fall of the angels. So that's a fall of the angels that even predates what we know about the infighting within the Elohim, Nephilim, Asuras, Anunnakas, Archons, whatever you will call them.
That would have been the cycle before. That would have been another iteration of it, another go of the wheels.
Yeah,
you know?
that basically was one stage earlier.
Yeah.
Than what we read about in the other ancient texts.
Wow, and
if I'm not mistaken.
They may in their times when they were like new kids on the block, say back in these pre-flood times, but it was current day then, present day. You know, there was probably stories then of these giant beings and things that fell from heaven way before some cataclysm that they had been told about.
Who knows if this was even happening on a material plane? Maybe this first fall happened only in a kind of energetic existence.
Yep. I'm liking it, man. I'm liking it.
And now we are getting closer to us, basically. With stanza 7, behold the beginning of sentient formless life. First the divine, the one from the mother spirit, then the spiritual, the 3 from the 1, the 4 from the 1, and so on. She starts counting and counting. The 4 fall downward, the mind-born sons of the first Lord, the shining 7. It is they who are thou, me, him, Olanu, they who watch over thee and thy mother earth. The one ray multiplies the smaller rays. Life precedes form, and life survives the last atom of form. Through the countless rays proceeds the life ray, the one like a thread through many jewels. When the 1 becomes 2, the threefold appears and the 3 are 1. And it is our thread, Olanu, the heart of the man-plant called Saptasarma. It is the root that never dies, the 3-tongued flame of the 4 wicks. The wicks are the sparks that draw from the 3-tongued flame shot out by the 7. Their flame, the beams and sparks of one moon reflected in the running waves of all the rivers of earth. The sparks hangs from the flame by the finest thread of Fohat. It journeys through the 7 worlds of Maya. It stops in the first and is a metal and a stone. It passes into the second and behold, a plant. The plant whirls through 7 changes and becomes a sacred animal. From the combined attributes of these, Manu, the thinker, is formed. Who forms him? The 7 lives and the 1 life. Who completes him? The 5-fold law. And who perfects the last body, fish, sin, and soma? From the firstborn, the thread between the silent watcher and his shadow becomes more strong and radiant with every change. The morning sunlight has changed into noonday glory. This is thy present wheel, said the flame to the spark. Thou art myself, my image and my shadow. I have clothed myself in thee, and thou art my wear-hand to the day. Be with us. When thou shalt re-become myself and others thyself and me, then the builders, having done their first clothing, descend on radiant earth and reign over men, who are themselves ... That's not given in the text, as it seems. So basically, that's a description of how life came into being on Earth.
I like that, the Vahan, a vehicle of consciousness.
SNES, and
Yeah.
the Saptasarma is the seven principled human being, and the La is again synonymous to Deva, the god.
You know, that vehicle
Deity.
of consciousness. I often say, you know, our bodies, it's just a spacesuit for like operating in this realm. And that's literally what it is. It's just a container, a vessel for that pure energy that we all are. You know, what we truly are. This isn't who we truly are, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the body is basically just a manifested form of whatever.
Yeah, this is I think we made it to the bottom of this actual PDF. I'm surprised.
Yeah, and so I'd say we jump over to that 5A evidence for that cosmic knowledge, because I mean, if somebody writes down that kind of text, which already contains so much information, you start to wonder, is there any evidence that people made use of the science or knowledge they seem to have had?
Yeah.
And I definitely say there is more than enough knowledge. And just open up that 5A evidence.
Yep, I've got it
PDF.
open here. Yep.
Yeah. Because now stuff gets really even more wooey. We do have found somewhere around Iran or Iraq a plate which is at least 5,000 years before Christ, which is at least dated back to 5,000 years before Christ, that plate, from Samara. And this plate shows in its center a swastika and a lot of stuff around it. And it completely matches up with the Milky Way. You can even see from it our position in the Milky Way galaxy, the position of our Earth and our Sun. And it completely matches up. I mean, of course, I don't know if you can show swastikas in YouTube nowadays without triggering an algorithm. But that thing, 5,000 years before Christ, they showed on a plate exactly how our galaxy was set up and how it's moving. Because if you follow that link in the PDF, you'll get to the site where I actually got the info from, and they do have an animation that shows basically in a very simplified way how the planets in our cosmos move.
Wow, yeah.
And then you will see why the similarity is so enormous to that plate.
It's a lot easier as well to picture the Mobius strips as well that you were talking about, because that almost gives you, I know it's not the same thing, Max, but it gives you the idea of multiple like loops.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, that animation, actually. Pretty trippy. You still there?
Yeah, I'm there. And I mean, basically, it forms a swastika.
Yeah.
The movement of the planets. So that's where this symbol comes from.
I think that's what people really need to get. I mean, usually when you see it in ancient times, correct me if I'm wrong, Max, but it's usually the legs of it, they're almost in a circle, like it's like it's a rolling sun kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, and it's interesting because
that in itself looks a bit
two
like
variants.
Yeah.
There's a right and a left turning swastika that is known in cultures. And usually the argument that's going on is which one denotes which turning direction. And if you have a look at how the Milky Way is set up with all its spiral arms, usually those legs of the swastika, they must be those trails that are left behind by the circling motion. So it's the swastika that also the Third Reich was using is basically turning counterclockwise, and counterclockwise movement is usually associated with the esoteric side of things. Basically, the energy side, the cosmic,
the left-hand
law.
path.
Yeah, not necessarily the left-hand path, but basically the immaterial world.
I got you.
I mean, of course, if you take such a powerful symbol, and if you believe in the idea that symbols transmit energies and have an effect,
I think they do.
You take that powerhouse, then you turn it from its actual orientation onto the point of one of its legs, which already, at least to me, looks way more aggressive than when it's standing on one of its foots. Then you put it inside a white circle. If you know a bit about the runes, there's one rune that basically looks like a square standing on one of its points. That rune is called, if I'm not mistaken, Ingus. And this is usually in esoterics and occultism seen as a sort of energy container or also amplifier. You could also replace it by a circle. What did they do? They placed that swastika in a white circle and placed that white circle on red ground. I mean, red is a very energetic color. It's set to stimulate the pineal gland, and its symbolism, the energies it attracts, are usually also rather violent in nature. I mean, the color of blood, red is also the color of love, of anger, and so on. I mean, Mars is the red planet, was worshipped as the god of war. I mean, now look at what kind of symbol they created for their Reich. I mean, what energies did they attract with that? Definitely nothing harmless.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
It's almost like an inversion, a bastardization of what it was meant to be, you know?
To be, yeah, of course. The upside down.
No different than, you know, when you see like the Christian cross being turned upside down by the Temple of Satan. No different. You know, taking something and totally change it just by shifting the perspective of it.
Yeah.
Symbols are very powerful,
of course. However, those upside down crosses with the Templars and all that stuff is more of a special symbolism, because according to the basically rumors or mythology surrounding the Knights Templar, they were in possession of knowledge quite similar to what we have looked at today, and therefore they saw the Pope and the Catholic Church, as well as the biblical belief, as a form of fraud. Because they said that so far off and so upside down and away from what actually was the true divine knowledge, we reject it.
Now, is this why, when I was watching Oak Island one time, Max, and it showed you, I think it was Domba, it's one of the prisons that the Templars were kept in France anyway, and on there was actually like the Kabbalah Tree of Life, and that kind of struck me, because I thought to myself, well, that's a bit weird when
that Tree of Life symbolism can be found not only in the Jewish Kabbalah. You will find it in some way also represented in Sumerian tradition as a Tree of Life, and you'll also find it again in India, and it very much resembles a Tesla coil in action.
Wow.
At least in my mind.
Whoa, that's pretty cool.
We'll also come to that sooner or later. And if you scroll down in the PDF, it gets even weirder.
Okay.
Because when people have such a profound knowledge of how our cosmos is arranged and how it came into being, you wonder if what use would they have made of that knowledge? And now we'll have a look at the Shiva Lingam.
Now, this is something I've covered before with Anthony Patch. Oh, this is very interesting indeed.
Mm-hmm. Don't know if everybody in the audience has heard about it.
I had never heard of one of these until I worked with Anthony, so probably not. I imagine there's a lot of people don't know what this is.
So a lingam is basically an ellipsoid pillar, which is known in Hindu mysticism as a primordial form of energy, or the shape energy takes just before it slowly starts to become matter. And it's also seen as a form of Shiva, or manifestation of the god Shiva. And usually those lingam, you'll find them just as an ellipsoid stone. And very common in Indian temples is the version with a yoni around them. That's a shallow bowl that surrounds that lingam pillar. Lingam and yoni are also the male and female private parts. Lingam, the male, and yoni, the female part. And these lingams are also said to have been brought to earth by the god Shiva as a form of energy generator that was supplying people with basically Shiva energy, so to speak. And there's one very special lingam, even active today in India at a temple. And this Shiva lingam is also known as an Agni linga. A linga that contains the fire of the god Agni, or a pillar of cosmic fire. And if you read about the accounts that people give that have traveled to that temple, it's the Arunchalam temple in Tiruvannamalai, in Tiruvannamalai. Yeah, now I got it right. And this lingam until today generates a massive amount of heat inside that temple. And no one knows how it does that. And if you have a look at what people tell that were there, for example, I went to Arunachalam, which is situated in Chennai district in India, a good place to visit Lord Shiva. Here the Lord Shiva named as Dakshinamurthy. In the temple, the Lord Shiva idol is Agni Lingam. When we enter into the Antralaya, we can experience the heat produced by the idol.
Ah, it's amazing.
That's Hindu people trying to write in English, so please excuse the grammar. And it's on our another account, on the 5 Panchabhuta, 5 elements temple, representing fire. If you have the chance to go near the sanctum, you'll feel the heat of the linga. Or if you're planning for a devotional trip around Tirupati, Chennai, please visit Tiruvannamalai, that Agni Lingam temple, one of the 5 lingas. You'll be stunned to see the size of the temple. You'll feel the heat inside the temple, as Swami is Agni Lingam. Blessed to have visited this place. And I've got some actual picture from that lingam. Unfortunately, you can see it in total, because it's basically dressed up with floral girlands and stuff to basically worship it.
Yeah.
But what you can see above that pillar is a small copper pot, and that copper pot is drip feeding water on top of that pillar to cool it. And this form of worshipping the Agni Lingam, or Shiva Linga in general, is present in India everywhere until today. People will pour water or milk over the top of the lingam during holy ceremonies. So that may be a kind of echo from a distant path when these things were used as energy generators, and they had to cool them to prevent catastrophic failure.
Wow. Dude. And you've got the site of where one of these sits as well. Yeah, is this like a power plant?
If you scroll down, you'll see that temple where that famous Agni Lingam is sitting. If you look at it from the aerial view, you'll see they have water-filled ponds. So back in the day when this was built, they had need for lots of water to be cooling the whole device. And it gets even more interesting because those 4 towers located at the basically at the outer circle of that whole installations, they do have exactly 13 stories. And atop of these 13 stories, you have 13 metal rods, spiked metal rods.
That sounds like some kind of, like you say, like some power plant.
Yeah, sure. And you have at the center of this temple this giant lingam that creates a heat that is so strong that this temple in winter, even without having a central heating system or anything, you have a constant 40 degrees Celsius inside.
Now, listen, even if there's shenanigans going on today under that Shiva, this thing is an ancient power temple. We'll be right back. Well, I'll be back tomorrow. Max Egan, everyone. Don't go anywhere. Freedom Link coming up. Wherever you are, make it TFR. And yes, I know, folks, you can barely hear me above that music, but I have been lost for words at the end of every segment of today's show. And what I'm looking at right now, and Max, you weren't on the stream that I had earlier on with Jimmy Jeans, but myself and Jimmy, we were talking about the time when I worked with Anthony Patch and we'd done a lot of shows together. And he was looking at the Shiva Lingas as well. And you know, we at one point we overlaid the D-Wave quantum chip onto a floor plan of Solomon's Temple. Now, it was Anthony and his wife who had told me to, or asked me if I could put this into Photoshop to see how similar they were. Forget similar. It was almost like they were perfectly fitting onto one another. Now, the reason I bring that up is because when I look at this complex here, I'm not saying it's anything like the quantum chip. However, what I am seeing is something that looks very, very machine-like. Something that wasn't not designed for meditating in, I don't think. I think we're looking at high technology from the ancient world. The kind of thing that maybe Tesla, like Max said, Tesla came up in the conversation, pulling that energy out of the ether. You know, having to cool the Shiva Lingas. Because of pulling that energy out, it causes heat. Just like with the Tesla coils. Oh, dude, this is amazing, man. You've blown my mind.
Yeah, hope I blow your mind again.
Listen, if you've got 5 minutes, let's take a look at the rest of these pictures, okay?
Sure, of course. So if you scroll down, you'll get a view from on one of the towers from the bottom up.
Yep.
So you'll see how big they actually are.
They're huge, absolutely massive, and it's rumored, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Max, but they think that these temples, the ones that look like this, probably built as a mark of respect in homage of some of the flying machines that used to be seen there, right?
Yeah, sure. These here in particular are not meant to resemble flying machines. There are others where definitely flying machines are the idea behind them. These ones really look to me like some sort of energy structure.
Yeah, the second one there, it's got like the big kind of row of like metal. I know that they'll probably say it's flagpoles, right? But it's definitely not flagpoles.
Definitely not.
Yeah, that looks like a big giant capacitor at the top.
Yeah, sure, something that's supposed to work as a kind of antenna, transmitter, whatever.
Almost an electromagnet. You see the kind of ropes or the things that are almost stretching around it.
If you have a look at the close-up picture of the top.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Yeah.
That round shape below it, as if it would contain a coil or could contain a coil. Below it.
Look when you zoom in as well. Look, it's almost as if you can see like it's given the jagged kind of perspective of the electricity. I don't know. It's that bit at the top that I don't know. It looks more like a machine than a building to me. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And just one bit down at the temple district, there's one pillar that's very interesting. And we definitely we have to give Pravin Mohan credit for that stuff, because I've taken these pictures out from one of his videos, because he's got that picture material. It's unbelievable. No? I've never seen anything like it before on any other YouTube channel
No,
So
this is
definitely,
amazing.
Pravin Mohan, give him a try and have a look at his channel. It's unbelievable what he has unearthed. And if you scroll down that stone pillar, that carved one, you'll see a person standing next to a sort of what at the first glance looks like a tree.
I know people are going to say that's a palm tree. Oh, hell no.
Yeah, but have a close look at that palm
Yeah,
tree.
because it's got
Those
forks.
perfect circular layers, and then at the top, you do have just between the crown of that pillar and the top, you have something shooting out.
Yep.
Okay, if you say it's a palm tree, people would say, yeah, that's leaves. But
I think that's fingers of electricity, my friend.
yeah, because that upper part doesn't resemble a palm tree at all. That looks like a Tesla coil to me.
I was going to say that's the top of the Tesla coil,
And
Max.
that's also what Pravin Mohan says in his video, where those pictures are from. He says that indicates the use of Tesla coils at that site. And what is also known about this temple is that people would come there to meditate in the aura of that temple, because that temple had a special energy that allowed people to heal or allowed people to reach higher states of consciousness through that energy field that was created there.
Frequency.
Yeah, frequency, sure.
Yep.
And I mean, today we know that electromagnetic therapy does work, for example.
Yeah. Yep.
So they definitely
I'm just thinking about that as well. I mean, that actual statue, though, when you look at it again, I mean, think about it. I mean, is the guy standing there in awe of a tree? Is this the very first tree he's ever seen? Or does it look like he's pulling his head back because there's a big giant finger of electricity coming out of it and he's thinking, dang, dude, what the heck?
People weren't dumb back then, because in most cases, especially in India, those temples with all those ornaments and reliefs and statues, they usually quite clearly show you what that temple is about, or what the temple was used for, actually, back in the day. It's basically as if they had given a user's manual.
Yep. I'm just talking to some of the people in the chat. We've got Mammoth, Jess and Dan from Down Under. They love your shows. I'm just having a laugh there. I'm asking her if she enjoyed it today. I bet you Jess is beside herself looking at all this ancient woo. She's talking about how her and Dan, they built a Baghdad battery in university. I love those cats Down Under. I really do. Yeah, that's super cool. But this is the kind of stuff that you see, folks. You talk about politics or even getting into that coronavirus, you know, it gets people on edge, so divisive, you know. You come into this kind of information and, this is where it's all going on. Thank you, Max. So what else have we got? What else have we got here?
What else? Of course, that the most amazing thing is that Shiva Linga is still active. Yeah. It's still emitting heat, and it can be seen, according to Pravin Mohan in his video, that that structure, the Shiva Linga, continues somewhere into the lower regions of the temple, the basement basically. And those basement or underground floors that must be present there are off limits to everyone except for the priests. So nobody knows what kind of further technology is at work or present down there that keeps that lingam emitting that heat.
Now, I know people are going to say, it's just a plug-in heater and it's all fake. But no danger.
How do they then get that whole temple without central heating, having a constant 40 degrees Celsius during winter? Just from that.
You don't have to convert me, man. I'm with you. I know. I'm with you all the way.
That's
scrolling down now. We see this big Shiva at the Gudumalam
they
temple.
Worship. That's how they worship the Shiva Linga. That cooling process, basically.
Now I've scrolled down one or a couple, and we've got the big giant god Shiva.
That Shiva that's standing in that pillar, and coming out from that pillar. This is from the Gudumalam temple, That's also taken from a Pravin Mohan video. Sorry that I have to rely on him so much, but he's actually the only source I know of who shows that kind of stuff to people. You won't find that on any Discovery channels, or maybe in some part of Ancient Aliens or so, but usually I haven't found another source for all that stuff. And this shows how Shiva arrives on Earth. He steps out of that pod or pillar.
It looks almost like he steps out of the Shiva Linga.
Yeah, exactly. And it is said that Shiva landed on Earth or came to Earth at the place where the Skudimalam temple stands today. And if you scroll down, we'll get an even better idea what that strange pillar or pod might have been that Shiva came down in on to Earth.
Is this it here?
And yeah, just one below. Next page, basically.
This one?
Wait a second. That's the normal. That's the one big pillar version, and you've got there's a statue of Shiva in the temple that shows the complete apparatus he was traveling in.
Max, if you open up your Skype fully, you'll see where I am.
Yeah, now you've got it. Yeah, exactly.
And then you wouldn't be behind on the. That's it.
I mean, of course, people at the time, when they saw what was happening, interpreted it in a form that they could understand. So they gave it the shape and look of giant man's flappy part. But when this was a vehicle that Shiva used to land on Earth, and they at least recreated the shape correctly.
Got you.
What resembles that body part? If you look for a machine or a vehicle, it's a rocket.
Yeah. Yep.
The head of the rocket, the shaft of the rocket, and out steps Shiva.
Yep. Absolutely. No, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Yep.
I mean, that's unbelievable. I mean, they have it right in all those out of place parts and stuff in India. It's like a Disneyland for out of place parts.
Even this gold on the outside, that could represent plasma around the ship.
Or light,
or light.
Flames. Flames. It also depicts flames and
exactly.
smoke. Yeah.
Yep.
And what's even more interesting is that people must have made use of vibrations and frequencies back in the day. Because just on the next page,
yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
Really strange, because you have temples that have a granite roof, or at least a partially granite roof. And there's nooses on those roofs, and hooked into that nooses are chains made of sandstone. And these chains made of sandstone, as well as the granite noose that they are fixed to.
But they were very primitive people, Max. They barely had the circle, you know.
Yeah, I know. But somehow they managed to hang those sandstone chains from a granite noose that is a closed noose. It's not a hook, it's a closed noose. And there is no seam visible.
How do we wouldn't be able to do that today, right?
Almost, at least only with very advanced technology. So they must have somehow made the rock soft. They must have been able to melt rock.
Yeah. Again, vibration. You know, if you can make the molecules vibrate fast enough, perhaps that takes the weight out of it.
And Pravin Mohan has found the evidence. So out in the countryside in India, I don't know where it exactly is. It's quite far off. It's remote. There is a hill that has, or a smaller mountain, that has a lot of rocks on them, and one very special rock. You'll see that just right below, exactly. Right below that rock that has some markings on it, there's this rock that has a way lighter color.
Yeah.
It's made from a material or a kind of mineral rock that is not present in that area naturally. It must have been brought here, according to Mohan. And what happens if you take a hammer or a stone and tap with it on that rock, you can actually hear, if you play that sound file I sent you, that Shiva stone instrument, because that rock is said to be one of Shiva's music instruments he used to play his tunes on.
Give me 2 seconds. I will get us there right now. Hang on. Show in folder. Hang on now, hang on. Over here somewhere. I'll get it, folks. Stand by. 2 seconds. Nearly there.
And
Yeah,
the
so
local...
which one is it? The Shiva stone instrument?
Exactly, that's the one.
Okay, right, now I'm going to play that one here. Give me 2 seconds. So what's that we're listening to there, Max?
This is Pravin Mohan hitting that rock with another rock.
That's a rock on rock.
That's rock on rock. That's this special light gray colored rock that gives that sound if you hit it with another rock.
There's actually something quite lovely about that sound. I don't know about anything else. It's like cymbals, yeah.
And now you need to know the local lore that surrounds this rock. According to Pravin Mohan, the villagers living around that place, they say that in ancient times, people together with the priests would go to that rock and they started drumming on that rock for a certain amount of time in a certain rhythm, and all stones around that rock would become so soft that you could basically form them with your bare hands. They would become putty.
So just say that again. So if you would hit rock on that rock, then the other rocks around it,
in the correct rhythm,
yeah,
for the necessary amount of time, and I guess with enough people doing that same thing so that the vibrations get strong enough, they would cause all other rocks around to get soft as putty.
Yeah, that's why you have soldiers that break step when they're going over bridges, because if you get that, you know, if that builds up that standing kind of wave, you know, you can get that resonance going.
And they must have been able to produce a very advanced standing wave.
Well, it's said as well that Tesla was able to basically make buildings sway. And all it was a box that it was just a resonator.
Castle.
Yeah.
Coral Castle, that mystery box at Coral Castle that was used to levitate the stones, according to the legend that surrounds that place. And the other interesting fact is that the locals say that in ancient times, sick people would have been brought to that rock, and they would have to lay down on the rock, right flat on the backs, and then the priests would start to drum on the rock in certain rhythms to heal them, using the vibrations and the frequencies.
Yeah. It's like when I had, I was just talking with Jess in the chat there. We were talking about the Aboriginal people when she was on, and her and her husband Dan. And I asked them about the didgeridoo. The didgeridoo, you know, we've all got that. You can hear the didgeridoo in your ears, very kind of vibrational. But that in itself is supposed to have medicinal healing properties if played right, if you know what you're doing with it. Yeah. It's the same, it's the same damn thing again. Now we're in Australia. There's the same knowledge in Australia, dude.
I mean, why were cathedrals or holy places also like Stonehenge and so on? They were all built or often built in a way that they would amplify sound or create certain patterns of sound.
And when I went to Roslin Chapel, I mean, Roslin already, it's infamous with the Templars, the Holy Grail, you name it. But the acoustics in that place, oh moly. You just have to whisper, and you can literally feel the sound round about you. It's an eerie, but I think purposely built acoustic generator, acoustic reverberator. I don't even know what you call these places. We call them churches and chapels, but they're almost like consciousness shifting centers. Because of the way the sound works in there, Max, you know?
The Cheops Pyramid. Big one. Before the Egyptian ministry that has control over all that archaeological sites decided to alter the inside of the Cheops Pyramid, they removed a set of stone parts from one of the tunnels. Before they removed that, you also had that reverberation and amplifying effect in the Cheops pyramid. They deliberately removed that effect by hammering away those parts of the pyramid that caused it. And that, even though they are so nitpicky about any harm happening to their ancient sites and stuff when archaeologists or scientists want to do measurements or anything, they deliberately destroyed their own pyramid. So why would you do that? I mean, if I had such a giant example of ancient high tech like the Cheops pyramid, and it does that sound thing, why would I deliberately destroy that ability or that function? Because if there's not some agenda behind it,
unless you were trying to hide it for a reason. Yep. Now I've moved on. Now I'm looking at these pictures again, Max. I've moved down to the next one now.
Of course. That's the Vitala temple in Hampi.
Wow.
And this temple is dedicated to music and sound. And that's the second example of sounding stone. Because if you play that Hampi musical pillars track, you can hear what sounds or different sounds those pillars create.
Okay, here we go, folks.
When you bang at them with a wood stick.
That's wood off stone.
Yep.
Well, if you had said to me, Kev, what's making that noise? I would have said a child with pots and pans and a spoon. I would never have thought that's wood on a temple.
Yeah, that's Pravin Mohan playing in the musical pillars at the Vitala temple. And the interesting thing is, these columns you're seeing there, these musical pillars, they are made from one piece of stone.
Oh, man.
One piece of stone. That's not separate parts. It's one piece of stone that this was made out of. So,
but it was done with just bits of stick and chicken bone, Max.
Yeah.
Slaves had done all chicken bone.
It gets even weirder. When the British ruled over India, they got curious about those musical pillars, cause how is it possible that pillars that are of the same shape and size and diameter and so on, how is it possible that they create different sounds if you knock at them?
Yeah,
so they wanted to see the trick, because they said, okay, they must be hollow, there must be something hidden inside and so on. So they ripped one of those pillars out. And much to their horror and dismay, it was a solid stone pillar.
Wow.
So all these pillars do have the same volume. They have the same diameter, the same measurements, and so on. The only way that you could make them sound differently would be if you were able to melt down that rock and create some kind of a rock alloy. By mixing in other substances, other rocks, to change the density and the frequency.
But then
then basically cast those pillars.
And then you've really got a problem, right? You've really got a problem because it's all out of one solid bit of rock, right?
Yeah, they must have been able to melt that rock and
melt it back
cast
in. Yeah.
And cast pillars with it that sound in different frequencies if you hit them.
So what's the image that's just below here? Is this where one of them would sit?
That's the inside of the temple. If you look at the ceiling, you'll find those strange ornaments. And they are all over the temple.
It looks like looks like a sprinkler system.
Yeah, almost, and it's in 3D. And you even find that that's a very dark picture. If you scroll down a bit lower, that's the main inner sanctum of the temple, which is completely unlit and basically made unattractive so that no tourist would stumble in and look and ask, first of all, where did the statue of the deity of the temple go? Because it was sitting right at the center below that ornament on the ceiling.
Yeah.
And of course, so that people wouldn't ask why this strange ornament on the ceiling resembles something we know from modern physics. And it's in 3D. I mean, some of this stuff also shows people dancing around those structures. And if you bring up that YouTube link to the modern cymatics, you'll see what they depicted there.
With Grammarly, you can find really good...
Yeah, we've got an advert playing first. Here we go.
And keep in mind, what you're about to see is all actually recorded and not photoshopped or edited with a computer. They really just set it up and played it as it is shown.
The film you are about to see has new characters. If you spare a little of your imagination.
I'll turn it down there so we can watch it. But yeah, cymatics is, I mean, look at that. And you get all of these different shapes depending on what frequency, what note you're playing. And that's the thing when you go to Rosalind Chapel, Max. There's 216 of these squares, these rock carvings, and each of them, it was found a number of years ago now, they all corresponded with cymatic frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they got a composer in, and they literally made some kind of tune, a song. They sequenced all of these 216 encoded notes, encoded into stone, way back in the day by the Templars. For what reason, who only knows? But they put it together in music. And the reason I bring that up is, you know, because this year, I remember when I first came across cymatics, when I was first waking up, as you call it. This stuff is mind-blowing, folks. This is what I call the good woo. This is the stuff that anyone seen it goes, what the heck?
Yeah, I mean, you see those cymatic patterns represented in 3D at an Indian temple that is dedicated to sound and music. They knew how sound looked in 3D. I mean, that's sold to us as state-of-the-art holographic devices that can basically show the expansion of sound in a room as a hologram. It's one of those absolute novelty devices they show people at fairs and so on.
And yet, we think it's a novelty today.
Yeah,
and we're looking at something that...
The ancient Hindus, they already had that in a temple.
Yeah, they had this down.
I mean, look at that picture forming in there. It reminds me so much of the flower of life. That symbol.
Also very reminiscent of this just here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not too far off it. So what else have we got in these pictures here, man? We're scrolling down. We've got this big one here.
When we're scrolling down, that's the Ramappa temple.
Yeah.
And the Ramappa temple also features stone pillars that must have been cast. That aren't carved out of rock.
That looks like something off a spaceship. Yeah, that looks like something off a spaceship or something out of Star Wars or something, dude.
Yeah, almost. And the strange thing is, at that pillar, every side is ornamented. It has some carvings on them, some relief. But that side that Pravi Mohan shows us here doesn't have. And why? Because something went wrong when they were casting the liquid stone. If you have a look at how this plate, how that side is bent, you wouldn't have been able to get that result by chisel and hammer.
No.
It looks like a piece of plastic that was fabricated in a mold, and something must have gone wrong while it cooled down or whatever. Or maybe the mold was faulty or so.
Yeah.
you will get that effect only if that stone was at some point in time liquid and then solidified again.
That is
it was brought into shape.
unbelievable. Look at it. Dang, dude.
And also that extremely smooth surface. I mean,
It looks
how
like
would you
that
do
looks
that
like that
with-
looks like plastic. That looks like something that's
yeah,
modern.
but it's stone.
Yeah, I know.
It's stone.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I also wouldn't believe it if there weren't the pictures.
I mean, if you look at, I mean, even looking at that there, I mean, that looks like modern day ventilation.
Mhm.
You know, but
Wouldn't be too wondrous if it served that purpose back in the day.
I think it might have done. You know.
Mhm.
So
or
what
maybe it was a kind of
Nah.
air conditioning or whatever.
Now here we go. This next one here. This is definitely where I think.
Yeah,
to
now
get
we get the
these-
connection, cause that's the ancient fortress of Sacsayhuaman in Cusco, Peru. These massive stones perfectly fit together, even though they have totally unequal shapes. And this gives an extremely durable wall that even would withstand heavy earthquakes. And if you have a close look at those stones, they bulge out. People call it marshmallowing. And you can also see at some stones, if you zoom in a bit, you can also see they have those strange indentations
Yeah.
and also some marks as if these stones at some point in time were soft and were with some kind of tool or maybe even bare hands brought into shape.
Yeah.
You also have some run marks. Don't know if they only come from rainwater or maybe some substance that was applied to them.
And you can think, I mean, look at that. The way it bulges out, like you say, the marshmallowing. It only makes sense if those were actually like putty and you're pushing them
Yeah, sure.
together. Yeah.
And
they're
the
going-
weight
Yeah.
pressed down and they bulged out.
Oh, dude.
And the other fact that adds to that theory is that those stones have an average weight of 360 tons per stone, at least the bigger ones. And these stones had to be brought across a distance of 20 miles to the construction site of this fortress. Now imagine people carrying...
I'm laughing because it's laughable.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But that's what they try to tell us. They tell us, yeah, people took all those heavy stones 20 miles away from the quarry to that place where they built that.
Yeah, it's like our Stonehenge over here. They've come up with this elaborate scheme that they took these stones from way miles away and they carried them in. Yeah, whatever.
I mean,
Whatever.
if I remember it correctly, they also showed that site in a episode of Ancient Aliens.
Yeah.
And related to that site, according to those to the Ancient Alien series, there's a legend about a god coming with a bird, from whose mouth would come forth a kind of liquid array that was making those woods, those rocks soft, or was lifting those rocks. So this is again definitely some ancient
That sounds like
account
it
of
could
high
be
tech.
directed energy weapon mounted on an aircraft, or yeah, it's definitely high
or
tech.
something that was working with vibration again, because when the Hindu people knew about getting rocks soft with vibration, and then we see similar stuff over in South America, would it be so strange to assume that they have had the same technology, that they had been given the same knowledge, that they had either contact to the same bringers of knowledge, or that they stood at least in connection? That
This is what gets me. We're busy fighting wars over different books that we read, about our different stories, our different beliefs, and yet when you look at all of the magnificent
where's the
wonders,
difference?
exactly,
Where's the difference in our
we're
history?
all the bloody same. We all come from the same place, and we're surrounded by these mysteries that literally are evidence that we're far from the most intelligent game in town. In fact, we're only just one cycle within many cycles. And what gets me, Max, what gets me is, right, as a civilization, we're pretty crap. You know why?
Today.
Yeah, because 2,000 years from now, 3,000 years from now, I bet you that wall that we're looking at there, that'll still be there. What evidence will there be for
Of us,
our...
yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
we build in
Yeah, and
glass, we build in plastic,
thick.
it's crazy.
Yeah, we burned down our data on DVDs,
Yeah.
or a few years ago we saved them on floppy disks. Who has a floppy disk drive nowadays?
Would you go into the realm of speculation where I lay that we may have our computers today and we've got our servers and where we store it all in ones and zeros. I think if we knew the truth about crystals, quartz,
We'd use them.
yeah, I think we could maybe find almost like a hard drive, perhaps, of all of the schematics, all of the blueprints, all of what we're talking about today, and finally then we would realize, heck, we're only just getting back to where we once were before. It's crazy, dude. This has been amazing, Max. I can't thank you enough, man.
I mean, we even got some more stuff which exactly falls into the same category, like the Indian stone forming and the South American stone forming, and that's Egypt.
Yep, here we go. There's the Egypt one there. Let me bring that up for the listeners. There you go.
At the east side of the Cheops pyramid, there are basalt ground plates. They are said to be the foundation or the floor for a temple. Or at least they were intended to have that purpose, and that building wasn't finished by the ancient Egyptians. However, if you have a look at those basalt plates, the ground on which they were laid out is completely uneven. But yet, all those plates follow exactly the shape of the underground.
Wow.
Now, if you can't make rock soft, how else would you get that result?
You can.
I mean, do that with a chisel or so. I mean, people would be busy for millions of years until they got that perfect fit. Now, if you have a look at the Assuan quarry, you will find traces, and that's granite rock, remember, one of the hardest rocks.
Yeah, we've got a city in Scotland called Aberdeen, the Granite City. And I lived there for a year. And I lived with all these giant granite buildings. It's a tough rock, dude.
I mean, you can cut it, and up to a certain degree you can chisel at it and so on.
But we're talking about people that allegedly just had chicken bones and ramps.
Yeah, sure. and now you look at those traces at that Assuan quarry. You do have scoop marks in the granite rock.
Almost like you mean how to get that scoop mark? That's got to have been like clay, like putty.
And look at the precision of those marks. It's one straight line down.
Yep.
It almost looks as if the surface was completely smooth. And that Assuan quarry gets even stranger because in the next picture you see a part of that quarry where they have removed the stone in a fashion that you would have a perfect plane wall.
Yep.
And on that perfect plane wall, what do we find there? Prehistoric paintings over the scoop marks. So this part of the quarry can't have been created by the Egyptians. They didn't remove that stone part. Because how would a prehistoric caveman have painted his birds and animals and hunters and stuff on that nice flat wall that's perfectly fit for painting when this part of the rock was removed and turned into a solid flat wall at the time of the Egyptians? That must be way older.
Holy shinoly, dude.
That must have been done long ago before the Egyptians.
2 seconds, Max. Here we go.
Me dad talks about the wee folk. A pragmatical man. Talks about it normally. Saw 4 of them as a 14-year-old. Never cut down a fairy tree.
Oh, and of course, when we first started talking, Max, we were talking about the wee people. And there's somebody, Germanus, thank you very much. Really, thank you a lot. Yeah.
Just for all the wee people and gnome and dwarf fans. If you have a look at Pravin Mohan's YouTube channel, he's got a video uploaded since quite some time that shows you the dwarf village over in India. It is within a nature reservation, completely off the trail. You have to wander for, don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours off-road to get there to that hillside. And the local tribes that still are allowed to live there, they say that at that site in ancient times there lived a complete tribe of dwarfs, and until today you do have some kind of like small stone huts created up there that maybe also have had some astrological use, because they usually only have a small entrance and one hole in the back wall that must have pointed at least thousands of years ago at a certain point in the sky. So I strongly advise visit that channel of Pravin Mohan, because the Indian dwarfs, that's definitely interesting.
Yeah. Now, hang on. It's Pravid. Is it more?
P-R-A.
I've got
P-R-A.
it. He's here. He's here. Here he is. Pravin Mohan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give people, I'm going to
Hey guys.
subscribe right now, and I'm going to give the link to the chat room. Go and check out that channel, folks. I will be definitely looking up the small ones, the dwarfy people. But Max, we've got a couple of images left on this
Sure.
PDF, so let's take a look at it.
When the sun stands right and the light falls in an optimal condition, you can again see those scoop marks on that wall with the prehistoric paintings. And now it gets really strange. If you have a look at that footage from the Sacsayhuaman fortress, this is a scoop mark from the site where that fortress was built in the stone.
Okay.
Then you have those from the Aswan quarry, and you do have the same scoop marks over at Tihuanaco at
In Mexico.
Calazaya. Yeah.
Way, thank you very much, Yeshua Messiah. Can't see the end of your name. Thank you very much. There we go. Yeshua Messiah Jesus. Thank you very much. That's awesome. So yeah, we've got them. Hang on. So we've got that there in Egypt, okay?
Yeah, we got the same stuff in Mexico. We got the same stuff in South America. They must have had the same technique for getting rock soft.
Yeah. Yep. Big time.
And
I mean, forensically, if you were doing this forensically, you would say, yeah, we're getting the same kind of effect.
The same tool. It must have been the same tool.
Yep.
So back at the Aswan quarry, you find some other strange stuff that usually tourist guides and the Egyptian ministries don't want you to talk about. Because there's, for example, the shaft dug into the granite rock. It's about 6 meters deep, 60 centimeters wide. You won't get in there and start hammering away at the rock. No way. How would you want to move?
That's insane.
And it gets even more insane, because there's an unfinished shrine for a temple at that quarry, which, at least to present-day expert stonemasons, is almost impossible to create. We have once again an object made from a single rock.
Wow. So this is all one rock?
Perfectly cut out.
Yep.
I mean, time has taken its toll.
Look at the perfect angles on the capstone of this that we're looking at. I mean, that's...
Yeah, look at the picture that shows a close-up of the inside. You'll be blown away.
Wow. All done with chicken bone, eh?
Yeah, sure. And now comes the official explanation of our beloved and renowned scientists and archaeologic explorers, how the ancient Egyptians did all these miraculous things. What they used.
So what did they use?
If you just scroll down, that is what they used according to our scientists.
Wait, whoa. So you're telling... Wait, hang on. Right.
That's
Oh,
the
right.
official explanation. That was the tools they used to work in that quarry on the rocks. That's balls of dolerite stone. And with these dolerite stones, they created all these perfect shapes, and
There's more chance of my
don't dare to claim otherwise.
there's more chance of my man balls making that hole in the granite than there is those things.
Don't they see how ridiculous their own explanations are? That they sell us as ultimate fact and truth?
I'm
come on.
I'm flabbergasted. A big shout out to Spooky Andy in the chat room. Andy, you need to listen to all of this show. I tell you, Max he's dropping the truth bombs here, but I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, in what timeline, in what dimension does anyone actually go, okay then, all right, I can see that, yeah. When you're on the tour and old Zahi Hawass took you to this site and he said, by the way, voila, here's the toolkit. I think I would have laughed in his face. I'd have said, you must be smoking your own crack if you think that's the tools that these bad boys use to get these monuments going. Yeah, sure. They sat there with that little thing and they just rubbed away at it. Yeah.
And I mean, even if they'd say they did that shrine using a chisel and a hammer, impossible, because granite, being so hard to work at, is the one problem, and the other problem, due to its hardness, it's very likely to crack and splinter. So you wouldn't get that smooth finish, those perfect edges.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, it's a blue chicken bone. It's got to be a blue chicken. It's got to be
the magic blue chicken bone.
The magic blue chicken bone. That's what done it. Don't tell Wilcock. Don't tell Sather. They'll try and tell people that that's a fact. But Max,
I mean, I've got my own theory concerning those dolerite stone balls.
Oh yes, talk to me about your stone balls, please, Max.
Some experts do have the theory that those stone balls were actually used to move rocks, like putting the rock on the small round-shaped stone balls and then pushing it. That's possible, but I mean, if they were so advanced in the technology that they could melt rock and stuff, and if they had such an advanced knowledge and idea of how our universe came to be, I mean that knowledge about physics and nature and so on, would it be possible that those stone balls, as we call them, maybe were the balls of a giant ball bearing for them, some kind of cutting machine? You know, like a
a ball bearing,
circular saw or something like that.
That one on the left-hand side is very circular. It's strangely circular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very interesting, my friend. But Max, we're definitely almost out of time here.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
Brother, I can't thank you enough for this, and we've still got one more show at least to do with the other stuff that you've got in the other PDF. Is that right?
Definitely.
Yeah. You see?
I guess we even will be spending more than one show with it, because we haven't looked at where the humans came from. We haven't looked at where the Vimana came from, and what they do in our present day.
Oh, now you see, see, this is what he does. We think we just got hit with all those like big headlines to take away from the show, but now he's set us up for the next one. Not only Vermanas, but where they come from. Max, you're a rare treat indeed. I don't know how we ended up crossing paths, but I am sure it was meant to happen. And
Definitely.
I know that from the audience I see, and I haven't been paying much attention to chat tonight because this has been engrossing, but if they've been half as blown away as I have been, then yeah, this is amazing, dude. It truly is. I can't thank you enough.
Hey, pleasure's all mine. It's always a great time talking to you.
Yeah, and that's my mum there. She's off to bed, so a big night to my mum as well. I'm ready for my bed. I'll be back tomorrow with Max Egan, folks. Fingers crossed. Touch wood. Send out some energy. It's meant to be tomorrow, and I'm only saying that because last time when he was meant to be on, it didn't happen. We know what happened then, and this is now us going to get the follow-up. The conversation with Max Egan here tomorrow on the Kev Baker Show. Max, thank you. I should be back tomorrow daytime. That's 2 safe spaces this week already. I'm doing well. Should be back for a third tomorrow. But like I say, if not, I will be there tomorrow night for the conversation with Max Egan. Again, I can't thank Max from Germany enough for what he's brought to the table today. A lot to take in, folks. A lot to think about. And a big shout out to Marty. Thank you very, very much, sister. Love you to bits. Love all of you to bits. And keep it real, folks, because we truly are in interesting times. And look how much we've got in common. We truly do have more in common than what separates us and divides us. So instead of arguing over the little stuff, let's all come together on the good stuff. The stuff that I call the woo. We're out of here. Have a good night. Keep your mind open. Keep looking for the woo, but not to the point where your brain turns to black goo.